My name is Curtis Yarvin. Though many first encountered my thoughts under the pseudonym Mencius Moldbug, I am by trade a software engineer, a builder of systems in the digital realm. Yet my intellectual inquiries have long extended into the architecture of human governance. My early life was spent within a traditional East Coast liberal family in Bethesda, Maryland, a common enough origin. I pursued higher education first at Brown University and later transferred to the University of California, Berkeley, where I delved into computer science. This foundation in logic and systems thinking inevitably shaped my perspective on the often illogical and decaying structures I observed in the world around me. The journey from a conventional upbringing to the articulation of what some call radical ideas was not instantaneous. It was a process of observation, of questioning foundational assumptions that many accept without scrutiny. The prevailing narratives, the ones repeated endlessly by established voices, began to show cracks under careful examination. Disillusionment with the promises and performance of modern democratic systems grew not from a desire for chaos, but from a search for more robust and effective forms of order. This path led me to explore historical precedents and alternative frameworks, moving far from the intellectual comfort zones of my youth and into less charted territories of political thought. This exploration culminated in my association with what has been termed the Dark Enlightenment, or the Neo-Reactionary Movement, often abbreviated as NRX. I am considered by many to be a central figure in this intellectual current. At its heart, NRX offers a deep critique of modern liberal democracy, questioning its sustainability, its efficiency, and its ultimate trajectory. It is not a call for anarchy, but rather a sober assessment of systemic failure and an exploration of what might realistically replace structures that appear to be in terminal decline. The core premise is that the current model is not the apex of political evolution, but perhaps a stage nearing its end. My initial foray into public discourse on these matters was through the blog Unqualified Reservations, which I maintained from 2007 to 2014. The writings there were perhaps less polished than my later work, often characterized by a raw, unfiltered examination of sensitive topics. These early essays, sometimes described as right-wing rants by detractors, nonetheless laid the essential groundwork for the more systematically articulated positions that would follow. They were the initial soundings, the first attempts to map out the intellectual landscape that I continue to explore today, seeking clarity in an age of deliberate obfuscation and widespread systemic decay. My critique of contemporary governance begins with a fundamental assertion. Democracy is a failed and dying form of governance. This is not a statement made lightly, nor is it born of mere cynicism. It is an observation rooted in the analysis of its operational realities and its historical trajectory. A core component of this view is the understanding that, quite frankly, the masses are too stupid for self-rule. This is not an insult, but a pragmatic assessment of the complexities of statecraft versus the general population's capacity or inclination to engage with them meaningfully. Effective governance requires specialized knowledge and a long-term perspective, qualities rarely fostered by popular sentiment. Central to my analysis is the concept of the cathedral. This term refers to the de facto, unelected power structure that dictates the orthodoxies of our time. It is a symbiotic network comprising the dominant media institutions, the prestigious academic world, and the entrenched political elites, along with various influential special interests. The cathedral does not rule by explicit decree, but by shaping thought, defining acceptable discourse, and manufacturing consent. Its primary function is to maintain the current ideological framework, and my stated goal is to facilitate the intellectual conditions for its eventual overthrow. To dismantle this apparatus of control, the question often arises: if democracy is so decrepit and ineffective, why does it persist? My answer, as I have articulated, contains two parts. First, that nothing lasts forever. All systems, no matter how dominant they appear, have a lifespan. Second, while American supremacy may once have rested on innovation and growth, the country, now a bloated empire, has been surviving for decades on the power of myth-making and mass illusions. The illusion of democratic vitality is maintained by the cathedral even as the underlying structures erode. The system persists through inertia and the careful management of public perception, not through genuine strength or efficacy. Given this diagnosis, the logical pursuit is an alternative. I advocate for the dismantling of liberal democracy and its replacement with systems that prioritize stability, competence, and long-term vision. This could take the form of a patchwork of techno-monarchies, where territories are governed by CEO-like figures in an authoritarian manner, or a more centralized, strict hierarchy led by a single sovereign ruler. The rationale is straightforward. Such systems can offer clear lines of authority, decisive action, and an escape from the paralysis and short-term thinking that plagues democratically elected bodies, ultimately aiming for a more orderly and functional state. Beyond theoretical critique, my work has also extended into the practical realm of building alternative systems, particularly in the domain of technology. I'm the founder of Urbit, a project that often puzzles observers but is deeply connected to my broader philosophical concerns. Urbit is a decentralized computing platform, an ambitious endeavor to re-architect the internet from the ground up. Its aim is to create a new layer of the internet where individuals have true ownership and control over their digital identities and data, moving away from the centralized corporate-controlled platforms that dominate the current landscape. The connection between Urbit and my political philosophy is direct, though perhaps not immediately obvious to all. As I've stated, Urbit is about giving power back to the individual, away from centralized control. This principle of individual sovereignty is a cornerstone of my thinking. Just as I critique the centralized, unaccountable power of the cathedral in the political sphere, Urbit seeks to address a similar concentration of power in the digital world. It is an attempt to provide the tools for digital self-ownership, a necessary component, in my view, for any meaningful form of personal autonomy in the modern age. My written output has evolved over time. After unqualified reservations, I began publishing on Substack under the title Grey Mirror. Here, the arguments have become more carefully articulated, often drawing extensively on historical precedent and detailed analysis to support my positions. The style is less overtly polemical and more focused on constructing a robust intellectual framework. In 2024, I also published a new book, The Dark Enlightenment, which expands upon these critiques of modern democracy and further develops the core tenets of neo-reactionary thought, making these ideas accessible to a wider, though still discerning, audience. My professional background as a software developer in Silicon Valley has profoundly informed this entire intellectual project. The engineering mindset involves identifying problems, analyzing systems, and designing solutions. When I look at governance, I see a system in desperate need of re-engineering. The principles of clear design, efficient operation, and robust architecture that apply to software are in many ways applicable to the structures that govern human societies. My work, both in code and in prose, is an attempt to apply this problem-solving approach to the most fundamental challenges of our time. The ideas I have articulated, once confined to niche corners of the internet, have found a surprisingly receptive audience among influential figures. Tech billionaires such as Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz, and even Elon Musk have shown interest in or engaged with these concepts. Political figures like Vivek Ramaswamy, Blake Masters, and Josh Hawley, along with intellectuals such as Walter Kern and Nick Land, have also been noted as supporters or individuals whose thinking aligns with aspects of the neo-reactionary critique. This growing resonance indicates a broadening dissatisfaction with the status quo among those who shape our technological and political landscapes. This intellectual framework is not merely abstract, it suggests concrete, albeit radical actions for a hypothetical American autocrat wishing to dismantle the existing order. Such a leader, I propose, should campaign on a clear authoritarian program, secure an electoral mandate, and then declare a state of emergency. This would be followed by a comprehensive purge of the federal bureaucracy, an action I anagrammatized as Rage Retire All Government Employees. Furthermore, this ruler should be prepared to ignore adverse court rulings and bring Congress to heel by mobilizing a populist base, while also taking decisive action to close down hostile liberal media organizations and universities. Unsurprisingly, these views have generated significant controversy. Critics are quick to accuse me of promoting authoritarianism, elitism, and a host of other undesirable ideologies. Such reactions are predictable when challenging deeply entrenched orthodoxies. The discomfort and outrage expressed by many are, in a sense, a testament to the potency of the critique. If the ideas were trivial or easily dismissed, they would likely be ignored. The intensity of the opposition often reflects the perceived threat to the established order, an order many believe is sacrosanct, despite its evident failings. The continued discussion and, in some circles, adoption of these perspectives, particularly in relation to potential future political configurations, such as the hypothetical scenarios involving figures like J.D. Vance in a new administration, suggest that this line of thinking is far from a spent force. The rhetoric and proposed actions of some contemporary political movements appear to echo these proposals, whether consciously or coincidentally. The future remains unwritten, but the intellectual currents I have helped to unleash will undoubtedly continue to shape the debate about the nature of power, governance, and the potential for radical systemic change in the years to come.